Josh Hart for JTH Boxing. I'm in Manchester, joined by Tom Grant. Tom, it's finally here, the rematch. Josh Taylor, Taylor-Catterall, it's finally signed. Obviously, you've been going through this process the whole time. I'm sure it's been a very frustrating last 2 years trying to get this over the line, but happy that it's now done?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the frustration really has been born out of issues that Jack's had on his side, taking its time to work out. These things are never easy, and yeah, just delighted we managed to get it all done in the end.
And was there any points over the last 2 years where you've doubted this fight ever happening? Obviously, it's been the biggest talk of the British public. You can see how much this means. If you saw the turnout in Edinburgh yesterday, you saw the turnout again today. Eddie Hearn has said the interest in tickets is the best they've seen in the last 3 or 4 years. Yeah. Just very relieved that it's now all ready to go.
Yeah, of course. I didn't really ever feel it wasn't going to happen. So long as there's appetite from both fighters to fight, eventually it will get made. But as I was sort of alluding to yesterday at the presser in Edinburgh, sometimes just with boxing, there's contracts and issues that the public don't necessarily get to see that just take time to work through. And from our perspective, it's just a case of really waiting for Jack to work through that process, and then the fight could be made, and that's what happened.
And obviously on stage, while you've got Josh Taylor and Jack Catterall going back and forth, Sam Jones keeps trying to have a little bit of a conversation with you. In his words there, he said you and Ben Shalom have got something in common. That I think you've got the same charisma as the weather outside. Obviously, I've not been outside since I first got in here at 1 o'clock this afternoon. But from what I've gathered, it's raining a lot.
No, it's 25 degrees and glorious outside in Manchester today. So I don't know what he's talking about. No idea.
Are you not really one for, obviously, we've not seen you do many interviews before, we've not really, up on the stage, you're more just there, leave it to the fighters, they're the ones selling the fight, you do all the background work. Is that what you're more about?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm not caught in the spotlight, unlike others. It's about the fighters, and yeah, ultimately everyone is going to pay the money and buy a ticket. They're not there to see me or Sam Jones go at it, they're just there to watch the lads, and that's my mentality.
And what was it about Leeds that spoke, obviously talking about neutral venues, but when we think about that, you'd think, like a fight capital city where you see a lot of big fights go, like London, Manchester, something like that. Yeah. Leeds, while Leeds is a great fighting city, it's not somewhere where you'd really take a 50-50 fight. Whenever you think of Leeds, you probably think of like Josh Warrington or someone from Yorkshire. What was it about Leeds that made it seem the right location for this fight?
Well, there was a couple of venues we looked at. So Leeds was one, Liverpool was another, Newcastle was another. We didn't want to do it in Manchester any more than they didn't want to do it in Glasgow, which was fair enough. So by the time, like I say, Jack had got his ducks in a row and December, January had passed, really Leeds was one of the few options that we had left, and we didn't want to risk losing the fight or losing the date, so that was how we landed at Leeds, and we were all happy with it, to be honest, so it wasn't really a sticking point.
Obviously, were there any other options for Josh Taylor, obviously when looking at his next fight, coming back from the Teofimo Lopez defeat? Obviously, the big talking point has been this was the only fight out there for Josh. I know there was talks of other fights at any points. What other fights were on the table for Josh Taylor?
I mean, listen, when you're former undisputed world champion, there's always going to be opportunities, whether it's at 147 or staying at 140. So, Top Rank, his promoters put a number of options to Josh for him to consider. Some were very, very good, very, very interesting opportunities, but ultimately all he was interested in was making the fight with Jack, and that's what we focused our efforts on.
And obviously we saw the talks of this fight possibly not landing on the zone originally. Obviously I know that's all done now, but just more personal interest. What other offers were on the table? Obviously we know there was one from Boxer. Were there any other offers put on the table?
Yeah, I think Saudi got in touch with Top Rank and explored that. I think TNT might have had a look at it. But ultimately, Josh is a Top Rank fighter. Jack's with DAZN and Matchroom. So once they decided that they were going to come to the table and they really wanted to fight, then that was all she wrote, really.
Are you happy with this fight being on DAZN, or would you have preferred it to have landed somewhere else?
I'm happy with whoever stumps up the money to make the fight happen. We spent a lot of time going back and forth on points that really we could have wrapped up a lot sooner. So whoever eventually comes to the party and says we want to make the fight, we'll welcome with open arms.
And obviously Sam Jones was also mentioning that he's got obviously not just Jack's biggest payday but Josh's biggest payday. I think the words have been twisted along the way.
Yeah, he's here now, tell him.
So what you said to me is that it was the biggest payday available right now in terms of the current fights available for Josh?
No, not necessarily, but in terms of what Josh wants to do and what his objectives were, he recognised that this is an important fight in his own career to put behind him and to make, and that's ultimately what we did,
And then finally, just what can we expect from Josh Taylor come final? I know you're not his trainer or anything, but obviously you've been working with Josh for a long time. What can we expect from Josh Taylor?
I think you're going to get the very best version of Josh Taylor. I really do. I think you're going to get the fighter that took him to where he got to, and I've got a huge faith in his team, and they've got huge faith in him. And I think we're going to be blown away by the performance we get.
And one last point that's just popped into my head now. I just want to quickly talk about the weight. Obviously, we've seen Josh Taylor say that his days at 140 were looking done after the Teofimo Lopez fight. But this fight has seemingly been agreed for 140. What was the reasoning behind that? I know it was obviously down to Josh ultimately to decide that, but what was it that made him say we'll have another crack at 140?
Just Josh's insistence. He knows that he can do the weight. He's had all his testing done. He's got a great medical team. Dr. Carl Evans done all his testing, said he can do 140 easily. And he wanted to run the fight back on as close to the original terms as we possibly could. We knew we weren't going to get the venue, but we could get the weight and we can get everything else. So that was the thinking behind it, really.
So I'm going to leave you there. Thank you very much for your time, and best of luck on what comes on.
Thank you very much.